if we say that specificity is king, then the very next thought is the more you do something, the better you're going to be at it. And there's only 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, 365 days in a year, all that stuff. So it goes to, it's a logical thought to think that you can't be specializing in 10 different things. In yesterday's video, I said that everywhere where I turn, everywhere I look, I see specialization, I see specificity, right? In my line of work, I never see a cardiologist who does emergency medicine as well. He does, cardiologists don't do shifts in ED, as emergency physicians. And emergency physicians don't run a concreting business on the weekend and pour freaking slabs, pour driveways and slabs for sheds. You don't see that, right? So the more specialized you get, the more respected you are in this society. And I'm not to say that, I don't want to say that this is, the way things should be. It's just the way that things are, right? There's been people that I've kind of known in my life who are doctors and they don't know how to change the tire on their car, right? So this is how far specialization has gotten. But if you want somebody to look at your health and you want somebody to give you advice, you go to that guy. So for that reason, I think specificity is the key. There's only a finite amount of time that we have on this planet in this life. And I think the more you specialize, the better. In training, in this fitness kind of world we're all in, there's many different kind of subgroups of fitness. You got CrossFitters, you got strongmen, you got marathon runners, you got sprinters, you got every single freaking thing you can think of. And it's very rare to see guys who are really well-rounded. You see in sports, right? There's positions in sports, right? So we can be talking about basketball, but one guy, is the point guard. He brings the ball up the court, and he's usually the smaller guy, and he sets everyone up. And then there's a guy who's under the basket who's much taller, grabs all the rebounds, plays really good defense under the rim. He's just a bigger body, right? So there's positions for different people. Very, very rarely do you have people like LeBron James who can basically play every single position on the court. And, in recent times, we've seen other guys kind of like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Porzingis, like all these kind of guys. This is just a basketball example. It's very, very rare to see guys who do everything really well. So if you're like me, somebody that is not genetically gifted, and I know that because I've been lifting weights for 7 years now, 7 years seriously, and my name is not on the banners anywhere. No one really knows about me breaking records. So this thing didn't come to me, easy, right? I had to kind of work it out. And so for somebody like me, and maybe you're the same who's listening to this, it's very difficult for you to kind of look at the training program of a LeBron James and work on everything. That guy's gifted. He's a gift to basketball, and he just has all the freaking tools. He can go for, he can do that. He can become kind of a master of all trades in the basketball sense. We, normal people that don't have those gifts, I think it is in our best interest to specialize in something. So if we're talking about powerlifting, I always say to people, just pick a lift that you really enjoy. Maybe it's the lift that you kind of have the best leverages for, and just go hammer and tongs. Make that kind of your focus of training. Make that your priority in programming, and then just go for that. You might be one of those guys that has everything really well. All the lifts are going really well. And for that person, I say, don't listen to me. Just go and do your thing. But if you're kind of in an intermediate, maybe you're a beginner, and your lifts have kind of slowed down, just pick a lift. I would say pick either the squat or the deadlift, because those things kind of carry over to a certain degree. They kind of use the same muscle groups and whatever. But if you really love the bench press or the overhead press or whatever the case might be, just focus on that. And when you become advanced in one of those lifts, that doesn't really matter what they are. It's better if you squat or deadlift. But if you become a master, if you become really advanced in that lift, you would have kind of worked out a lot of the things that also apply for other movements. Programming, how to get through plateaus, volume, intensity, frequency, all that sort of stuff. You can kind of take from your number one lift and carry it over to wherever you're kind of whatever you want to work on next. Yesterday when I made that video, I kind of started thinking about everything around me, and I just kept thinking like, I was watching Manchester United and Manchester City this morning, like, the replay, and I'm thinking to myself, there's 11 soccer players aside here, and they all have a specific role. They're all really good at something, and it's not, the coach doesn't go, all right, boys, today we're going to play Ronaldo up front. Tomorrow you can play defense. It's not like that, man. Ronaldo has a very, very, certain skill set, and you give him a role which best fits that. So even within these sports, these things that we love, there are specialists. And I think it is by far the best thing to specialize. Specialize, man. I don't know. I might be wrong. A lot of people are going to be saying, well, but powerlifting is a sport of three. It's a total. It's a 3-lift sum, right? We sum all the lifts up, and that's how you go. Even though that's the case, it is so damn hard. Like, I don't know, man. Like, it is so damn hard to get the bench press going, the squat going, and the deadlift going at the same freaking time. In my experience, I found it really, really hard. So this is why I've gone, I hit a plateau, and I'm like, man, this squat business is doing my freaking head in. This hip pain is doing my freaking head in. And I went something like, I want to look at the log again, something like 3-4 months without doing a bench press at all. I went, screw it. I want to get my squat moving, and that's my number one priority. When that thing starts going, then I'll start doing the bench press. That's kind of how I think about it. And a few of you guys have said the same thing, that it's a lot easier to just focus on one thing. I remember my brother, a few years ago, he was like, man, I want to get into weights. What do you think? He's not a guy who's ever kind of lifted seriously. And he said, what would you recommend? And I said, look, man, I think the safest lift of all is the bench press. You don't need coaching or anything, just to lay down on the bench. You're not going to get snapped up as long as you keep the weight kind of relatively, good and not too heavy. With the squat and the deadlift, there's a spine involved, there's hip hinging to learn, there's, mobility in the ankles and the knees and all sorts of things. Yeah, it's a very, very technical thing. Even though the deadlift is just bend over, pick the bar up, it's much more technical. So when I was talking to him, I said, look, man, I really want you to be in the room when you're kind of learning how to squat and deadlift. But if you want to just get yourself like a bench press at home, just do that. Just focus on that and, get that thing going. And then later on, if you're serious about, this thing and you want to improve the rest of you, then, do that. So even as a beginner, I was, even back 2-3 years ago, I was telling, beginners in powerlifting, I guess in strength training, just focus on one lift. And then through that, instead of buying, 50 different things and taking so much information in and being overwhelmed, just focus on periodizing, focus on excelling on one lift. And then, as that thing starts to go along, as you start to kind of master one lift, you're going to kind of learn the basics, which basically carry over to every other lift. Your volume, intensity, frequency, all that kind of thing. But if I'm teaching somebody 3 different things, it's very, very difficult. I know if, from work, you kind of get introduced to one role at a time. Your shift coordinator, then your triage. You don't start the job and we're teaching you how to go from the resource room, how to do discharge planning, how to turn a patient that has got a C-spine injury, a spinal column injury. You don't smash somebody with all these different things. You learn one skill at a time. That's kind of how I think about, especially for people that are not gifted. And a lot of you guys are going to be like, man, I think you're gifted. I don't think I'm gifted. I've spent a lot of time in this, and that's the only thing that differentiates me from everyone else. I'm just mentally stubborn. I'm one of those guys that you'll meet when something is set in my mind. I'm going to hammer my head against the wall until I break through. I'm very kind of mentally driven. That's kind of my strength as a person. And a lot of you guys are going to say, man, 200 kilos for one is very impressive, and all that. But I've been at this for a very long time. Some of you guys haven't been training for very long at all, and you're going to get impressed by this. But for me, I look at some other guys who've trained 7-8 years and will go, much, much better numbers. Those are the guys I kind of compare myself to. And it's very, very difficult because we've spoken about this. I don't know what they've taken, what they haven't taken. Different techniques. Someone goes to low bar, half squat. I'll go all the way. So there's a lot of different things to take into account. But I regard myself as somebody that it's not gifted, and I can't take on 5 different movements and progress all of them. I'm one of those guys that likes to think in a specialized kind of high specificity, because, you know, I opened the video saying that I assume that specificity is king, and I've seen it everywhere. If somebody wants to go into neurosurgery, I don't see them pouring concrete on the weekend. All they do is this: they go to the hospital, they work, and when they're away from the hospital, you know, they do a lot of study and whatever. They can't be, you know, professional basketball players in the NBA while also doing neurosurgery. It's just not enough time. I remember Albert Einstein once said, you know, the field of physics, the field of mathematics is so freaking broad. You can't master the whole field. You need to pick like a subsection. You need to pick a topic and become a master of that. And certainly we see that everywhere. You see it absolutely everywhere. You got a mechanic that specializes in euros. You got mechanics that specializes in this car, that car. You know, the mechanic that I take my car to, basically every single time I go over there, all he has in his yard is Evos. He's an Evo specialist. He doesn't do anything else. He can do other things. Of course he can. But, you know, if you're seeing evolutions every single day and you know that 4G 63 engine inside out, you know, you've become a specialist of the Evos. And so everyone that's got an Evo in Adelaide pretty much goes to him because he's the expert. And so through that way, you get some sort of kind of respect, and you develop a reputation. You know, I'm the squat everyday guy. Even though I'm not the world record holder, I've devoted so much freaking time into the squat that I've kind of existed with this exercise for a whole bunch of time. And so people are like, well, Ivan might know this because he's damn spent 10 years freaking doing this. Whereas somebody else who's a real good bench presser, like that fella, I forget his username, UPF lifter or whatever his name is, the Asian fella, he's like 70 kilos and he bench presses like 180 or something like this. Something absolutely crazy like that. You know, so I would love to talk to him about bench pressing, right? You know, so he's a specialist of the bench press. And even though deep down I want to be a really good bench presser, a really good all-around lifter, it is very, very difficult to get that. It is so difficult, especially as a natural lifter with a limited amount of resources and a limited amount of recovery points. It gets to a point where, you know, today I did squatting. All right, I'm very extreme in my squat everyday approach. But if you were like, how would you do it? Like, you know, it's very hard to program everything at once. So if I have got 10 recovery points to spend and I spend all of them in the squat, obviously my squat is going to get ahead. But if I split, you know, my 10 points into, let's say 3 into the squat, 3 into the deadlift, and 2 into the, or 4 into the, whatever, bench press or whatever, it's just like you're splitting your energy into a few different things and you're not going to become really good at either of them, relatively speaking, you know, spending 10 points into one thing. It's kind of like a few of you guys were kind of talking about power building, this idea that training for strength and bodybuilding at the same time. So you kind of look good and you are strong. Even though that is very appealing to me as well, and I kind of flirted with that, you know, 3 or 4 years ago. It's really appealing, but you're not going to become a specialist in either thing. It's kind of like that neurosurgeon who's also doing concrete on the weekend. Yeah, you know, he's doing surgery and he can pour concrete, but the guy that's doing pure neurosurgery all the time, that's all he ever thinks about, I think he's going to be a better neurosurgeon than some guy that's pouring concrete. You know what I mean? I know it's very different disciplines that I'm kind of comparing to, but hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. So this is kind of how my brain thinks. And so in my mind, if I get the squat going, right, if I really hammer the volume and really kind of work out the squat, I've kind of demonstrated this on the channel so far, and definitely to me as well. Every single time I get the squat moving, something else moves as well. And a lot of you guys have also said, if you develop a better squat, your bench press is going to go as well. And there's been a lot of theories about that, about, you know, testosterone increase because of squatting, and it's such a wholesome exercise. Literally everything is involved. That, you know, your whole body starts to become more anabolic because you become a stronger organism. So it's kind of one of those things. It's kind of like if you're building a character in the video game, you know, you could spend your 10 points, you know, I don't know, 3, 3, and 4, and you're kind of an all-rounder, but you don't have like that special move that you really mess people up. So when I build characters, you can just imagine back in the day, I put all my points in one thing, man. And so when she hits the fan, I go to that thing and I like knock people out, right? I remember playing Skyrim, man. I literally just not use any other skill because I don't want to waste my points on anything else. I don't want to level up and you know, on 4 or 5 different skills. I just want to spend every single point when I level up on archery or on sneak or whatever, and so I can make the game easier. And really, the game becomes easier. This is the thing about video games as well. It's like when you are a level 10 and you got 99 archery or whatever, level 15, man, you are one shot killing everyone. But if you're a level 10 or 15 and you've kind of spread your points across the whole board, all of a sudden you're running up against other dudes who are level 15 who are specialists, and you're like running for your life because that guy's got 99 longsword and he's going to like crack you over the head and kill you. I know they use a lot of analogies from video games, but literally that's how I think. That's how I think. It's kind of like David Beckham. He's a long pass specialist. When she hits the fan, man, you want him to freaking, hit that free kick. And because sports is made basically about a whole bunch of specialists or skills that are kind of more heavily orientated for certain positions, that's what team sports is. Even in tennis, if you think about tennis, like I know that the top guys kind of have everything really good. They don't have glaring weaknesses, and that's kind of what makes you really great. But all of these guys have something that's like really, really good. Like it's a big serve or really good defense or whatever the case might be, forehand, backhand. I see it everywhere. Like, I don't know. I might be wrong in this. This is kind of how I process all of these things. But if you're listening to this and you're not a freak and you're not just putting on mass but just by looking at a freaking dumbbell, consider specializing in a lift, and you might be surprised how everything starts to follow that advancing of one specialization. Anyway, guys, that's what's on my mind today. Hopefully that makes sense. I feel like I'm just going on about what I think about these things. But anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.